Hey everybody, Mark Masters, Monday night. It's Always Bookin Comedy. We got Nick Ellis in the house out of Denver, Colorado, rocking some Cleveland stuff. I bet we'll get into that maybe in a little bit. Nick's a very funny comedian, show producer, and we're going to talk about booking comedy. How you doing tonight, Nick?
Good, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing terrific. Have a good weekend?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah, I did hosted 5 shows at the Denver Comedy Lounge,
Nice.
and yeah, and then had some me time on Sunday just to kind of be by myself, which was needed after a busy weekend like that. Yeah,
Yeah, how did that shake out? Was that one Thursday, two Friday, two Saturday?
it was the Thursday show got canceled, so there's 2 Friday and then 3 Saturday.
Wow. Give me a hosting tip. Something you learned this weekend, maybe.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, your number one job, is just to get the other comics on stage, right? I feel like some people try to add their own uh, stand up in there, in between comics. And if it's there, certainly do that, right? But I feel like
Sure.
sometimes it's forced. And also just be mindful to not ruin the momentum if one of the comics ends on a hot note, right? Just kind of keep
Yeah.
the show going and let's move on to the next
Yeah.
comic.
Move it quick. That's the lesson. Hey, can I ask you a question?
Yep,
Can you are you on a phone? Can you try and rotate your phone so we
I
can
am on a
get
phone.
you like turn it 90 degrees?
Sure.
See if we can get a wider angle.
I, I would love to.
See if that there, boom, look at that. Magic. Cool.
We
Uh,
better?
yeah, that's better. That's
Perfect.
awesome. Uh so okay, so you hosted 5 shows. Any so in your opening sets, any interesting crowd work or anything like a light audience or a big audience or a rowdy audience, anything of note?
Yeah. I mean, I think every show sold out. So an audience of, I think their capacity is 65.
Okay.
Yeah, just some light crowd work, some layup stuff, especially being here in Colorado and Denver. Some of my more opening stuff is just being geared to Colorado culture and kind of how people dress, more of like you're acting like you're walking out of an REI. I feel like is pretty common to see around the city and around the state. So it's always fun to kind of point out people in the audience, be like, oh, like him. And it's kind of an easy
Yeah,
layup.
right on.
It gets people involved, which is nice. Yeah.
Yeah, be present. Audiences love it when you're present. And in Colorado, that's a good, it sounds like
Yeah.
you have a good recipe to set that up. Okay. Who is the headliner?
The headliner, it was two Pauls actually. It was Paul Farvar out of Chicago, and
Okay.
then Paul Ollinger out of Atlanta was featuring. Um,
Okay.
both
Nice.
just awesome guys, phenomenal, yeah, nice guys. So
Cool. Did you learn anything
definitely
watching
became
them over
fast
five?
friends throughout the weekend.
Oh, nice. Did you learn anything watching them do 5 different sets?
Well, there were certainly portions where I went to the green room and took some time to myself during that. But yeah, I mean, just the
Watching
being,
half of a set, did you learn anything?
yeah. I would say overall, I still logged at least an hour of watching them over the shows,
Okay.
but you know, I just kind of the being present thing is so helpful, right? I mean, because so many times you can just go into a set with, okay, well, I'm going to do these jokes and that's it. And I think that's a fine approach for sometimes, but it's also like, what is the audience feeling? What kind of jokes can you, if one thing doesn't work, don't dive down that rabbit hole, right? So kind of pivot and see what's working with the audience. And they were both just kind of masters at that. So it was great.
Nice. Awesome. Well, that's cool. Denver Comedy Lounge, everybody. Check it out if you come through Colorado. So, how long ago did you get started in comedy, Nick, and where?
Yeah, so first time I did an open mic was in 2014 in Bowling Green, Ohio, which is where I went to school at, Bowling Green State University. And I found out they had an open mic, and I had never done comedy before, but I was just a big fan of watching Netflix, and I had written some stuff down as one does, aspiring comedian in a notes app. And
Okay.
so I went to one open mic, and I didn't get booked, or I didn't get on. the host just forgot, and which I was very thankful for because I was sweating bullets. And so then the next time I went up, and it's kind of been going ever since. So I hit kind of a rhythm of just doing like open mics once a month while I was in the Northwest Ohio area. And then when I moved out here to Denver, I kind of more picked it up to, more weekly and even hosting and stuff like that, and really getting in a good rhythm out here.
That's awesome. How long have you been part of the
When
Denver scene?
I moved out here in May of 2020 during the pandemic. So then I would say whenever things lightened up in Denver was
Sure.
was kind of when I joined the scene, after COVID. So I started hosting an open mic at Epic Brewing through Savage Entertainment with Trey Blay,
That's where I
January
met you.
2021, and then
Very first
ran that
time.
for 2 years. And yes, exactly. What
Cool.
How long have you been doing comedy, Mark?
A little over 5 years. Started in June, whatever, 2018.
And where was that?
In Denver. Started in Denver. Irish Rover was my first mic. I went to, you read all about this in my book, Not Good Yet, or listen to the audiobook. Available apparently on Spotify. Do you have paid Spotify by any chance?
I do.
You do? Oh, I'm going to talk to you after the show. Or maybe you can even do this. Like, can you pull up on your phone and see if Not Good Yet comes up as an audiobook? Do you, or I guess you can't because you're using your phone to film. Never mind. We'll do it. We'll do it at the end.
Yeah, I was
Uh,
gonna say I don't want to cut this short,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah,
I have a
yeah.
like a audiobook distributor, and recently they told me, "Hey, you're on Spotify to for free to premium users." So, but I haven't verified yet that that's true. And this has happened before where like I didn't check a box or sign a legal agreement or something like that, and I later find out I'm supposed to do something. So, anyways, after the show, we'll check it out. Anyways, Not Good Yet, which little sneak preview. You read about how I got started in Denver, my first 100 mics in the first 6 months of doing comedy. I went to Mutiny Information Cafe, which doesn't exist anymore. It's now called HQ. It's on Broadway, which also doesn't exist anymore temporarily. They are recently flooded and have
Yeah,
been
because the
out of
flooding.
business.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But anyways, I went there and watched a mic, and I think this is a kind of typical experience. I saw somebody or a couple people who were just terrible, and I was like, well, I can't be worse than that. So that kind of motivated me a little bit. Also,
Yeah.
I can still remember being like almost violently sick, like in my stomach. I had such like a I was so afraid. I wasn't even planning to perform that night. I was just watching it, but just the idea of performing, I had such terrible stage fright back then that I was scared even watching comedy once I decided I was going to try it. And then what happened that was a Friday night mic. The next Monday, I went to Irish Rover, and for whatever reason, I decided, okay, I can do this next Monday. Like I liked that mic, the way it was run, the
Mhm.
comics I saw, Oren, etc. And so the following Monday, I did my first 3 minutes, which
Yeah. And yeah, that stage fright is just so common. Like, and I remember running my open mic. I mean, new people would come through there all the time, and they'd be, does the nervousness ever go away? I'm like, yeah, it certainly does, but it's not going to go away after like 2 reps, right? You got to work at it a bit. So
yeah, of course. So yeah, that's how I get started. So let's talk about some booking wins for you personally. Sounds like
let's do it.
booking 5 hosting spots at essentially a comedy club in the side of a sushi restaurant. Huge booking win. Let's go back. What was like a memorable early booking win for you?
My first thought is so I hit the road for the first time for stand up this past summer because I got into a comedy fest in Minneapolis called Loons on the Lake. It was the first edition of that. And
Okay.
so I wanted to do a road trip and kind of book some spots to make it worthwhile. So
Okay.
I ended up booking a show at Teehee's Comedy Club in Des Moines, which was just a
Okay.
blast.
Yeah.
And then
I've been there.
I
Were you like on a show or were you the show?
I was on a show. Yeah.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Cool.
I'd like to think I am the show for, whatever
You
the
made it your
duration that I'm on
show. The
stage. Yeah,
audience
exactly.
afterwards were like, that was the Nick Ellis show.
That was, yeah. But yeah, and then I closed out a Don't Tell show in Minneapolis the Friday, which was awesome. Like the nerves were pretty high for that one. I don't know
That's
if just because
incredible.
I hadn't done a Don't Tell before or because it was at a location that had cats and that's my one allergy, but it went well. It went great.
Did you know that ahead of time?
Yeah. The booker, she had said, "I have a great show for you as long as you're not allergic to cats." And I'm like, "That's my one allergy, but I'm gonna take, just an allergy pill, and we should be good to go." And we were.
That is a
So
great story. Like the things comics will do for stage time.
yeah, exactly. That was fun. But yeah,
So let's talk about that Don't Tell show. How did you set that up?
through, I mean, Facebook, mostly kind of reaching out through the connections that I had. I had saw that a comic had posted in the Denver scene about looking for dates when she was coming to town, and I tossed her, I gave her some contacts, and then I saw she was from Minneapolis, and I was like, "Hey, do you have any contacts for a show on a Friday?" And she put me in connection with someone, and kind of just networking. Yeah.
Heck yeah,
So
that's awesome. Did you send tape over?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Where?
Sent it a nice little 5 minute spot. Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what your tape is from
Uh, I know
or
the
was
tape
from?
I use now is 5 minutes from Comedy Works. The tape I used then I think was a different 5 minutes from Comedy
Okay.
Works. So
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah. So
sounds like it
local
tracks.
home club. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, okay. So you strung two shows together on this driving road trip. Des Moines, Iowa,
Yeah.
Minneapolis. Anything else?
Yeah. Then I had the fest on that Saturday, and then Sunday I did a show in Omaha. Zach Peterson, he was organizing it. I met him through a fest, the Chief Comedy Festival in Trinidad, Colorado. And so I
Awesome.
did a show there and I hit up the zoo, which was very fun. And then I drove back on Monday.
Nice. Was that Sunday show? Was it in a brewery with like lots of windows?
Yes, it was called the Bull Moose.
Oh, that's different than
I
a
know he has
Sunday.
another one. I think it's called like Funhouse or something like that. But yeah,
Yeah, I
his
think
was
I did
called the
his
Bull
other
Moose.
one.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, that's great. So like, am I doing the math right? Was that 4 consecutive nights of shows?
Yeah. And by the end, I mean, I was just kind of firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, you were very
And
sharp.
right, which is a really good feeling
Yeah,
to have. Obviously,
that's nice.
it's easy to get a little rusty, even just going a
Um,
few days or a week. So,
so you mentioned the comedy festival out in Minnesota and the Chief Comedy Festival. Any thoughts on comedy festivals? Any tips? Any advice for other comedians?
I'm actually looking for advice from other comedians. This is the first year that I've actually been getting into festivals, which is a
Okay,
cool change of pace. Let's see, I've done Loons on the Lake in Minneapolis, the Chief in Trinidad, Cowtown in Greeley, the Madison Comedy Week, Madison, Wisconsin, and then Six City Comedy Festival in hometown of Cleveland. So I think I've gotten
nice.
into 5 this year, which is more than one I got into last year. So yeah,
That's
I'm
great.
pretty excited about where that's going.
Heck yeah, man, you're trending up. What was like one notable experience at a comedy festival?
I would say I'd say getting the opportunity to fly back home to Cleveland and do a comedy festival in front of like all my family and friends. That was kind of on the bucket list for this year. Cleveland has 3 fests, and I was hoping to get into one of them, and I did.
Nice.
And then just getting that experience, it was kind of like a bucket list item, if you
What
will.
what
Yeah.
was the venue?
It was called the Bop Shop. It's like an old jazz club, which I really want to go
Cool.
there for jazz. But yeah,
Uh-huh.
it was. My mom had told a bunch of my family and their friends, so they brought like 20 people, and getting to
Nice.
close out that show was just a blast. I'm not sure if I got to close it out because of what I'm bringing to the table for comedy or because of how many people I brought to the show. I'd like to think it's the former, but more than likely it's the latter. And you know what? That's okay with
Sure.
me.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Um, awesome. Awesome. So now let's talk about, have you ran an open mic? Can
Yep.
you talk about like why you started that and maybe how you started it? Like how you found the brewery?
Yeah, a lot of that legwork was originally done by Trey. He's the one that I had mentioned runs Savage Entertainment. And so
Okay.
coming out of the pandemic, that organization, they had about 4 open mics they were starting, and he had posted in a Facebook group about looking for hosts. And I was relatively unknown in Denver, having just moved here and having been in lockdown, right? So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to, get my feet wet in the scene and, get some hosting abilities and skills that I really hadn't had yet. And
Hmm.
so I was very thankful when I shot him a DM and we met and things ended up working out. So like I said, a lot of the legwork for what that brewery or having found it was done by Trey, but I've also found other locations for shows. One was Wagwan Brewing, which was here in Denver. That has since closed down. And then I did one show at a local plant shop here called the Wardian, and that was kind of a one and done. Just for you know, the show was good. It was fine. It wasn't going to work out long term.
Okay.
But now I run my show here at Oasis Brewing, and that's been a blast. That show is
So how did,
also yeah. Go ahead.
just talk about how you found these venues. How did you rope these venues into doing comedy?
Yeah. Let's see. Wagwan. The manager at Epic was working at that brewery. He had moved over there. So I hit him
Okay.
up asking if they had any appetite for comedy, and that was kind of my connection there. For the Wardian, it's the plant shop's kind of in my backyard, so I just walked over and I saw they were building some stuff in their backyard. They have an outdoor space, so I was like, "Hey, are you looking for events? Would you ever be interested in a comedy show?" And just super nice owners. They're just happy to get anyone in the door.
Yeah.
So that they were very willing to do so. And then for Oasis Brewing, where I host now, that was previously run by Damon Howard. He was leaving town to go to Chicago, and
Hmm.
there wasn't anyone to take over. So I messaged their manager, and they were all ears for continuing the show.
Nice.
Yeah,
Awesome. So talk about like selling tickets and getting people into seats. Uh,
yeah. So my first two experiences with that at Wagwan and at the Wardian, I didn't quite have it down. Was still kind of figuring out how advertising works and how to get butts in seats, even if it was a free show, right? So, but with Oasis, it's a free show, but just because it's free doesn't mean people are going to come. It turns
mhm.
out.
Yeah.
So a lot of it's Facebook advertising, but there's certainly a right and wrong way of where to put your money. The days that make the most sense, how long before the show, the radius of the brewery. Uh, but also a big portion of what I've been doing is a lot of barking, just walking around with the sign. I did that at the Denver Nuggets championship parade, which was fun. I was just walking up down. I was like, well, there's like a million people here. Uh, and that ended up working out well. And then
Nice.
they also have a very popular trivia night on a Thursday before my show. So I
Okay.
go up there, and the hosts of that are super kind to let me give a shout out, to see if anyone's interested. I'm like, well, they already know where the brewery's at, so maybe they'll be interested in
Right.
another free event. And then, yeah, just walking around with a sign, just kind of putting yourself out there. It seems a lot more approachable than just handing a flyer to someone because you already have their attention with the sign, especially if, like me, if you have poor handwriting, they're going to be
Right.
squinting to see, well, what does it say? And then from there, just the people that you do get to reserve tickets, building that email list so you can hit them up for future shows. So
Yeah.
it
Do you use
it's certain,
Eventbrite?
yeah, yep. It certainly didn't sell out all at once. We started with 50 seats for the first show, and that sold out. Then 60 for the next, and then we kept building upon it.
Wow.
And now we're consistently at 100, and we've sold out, I think, 10 of the 11 shows. So
That's awesome, Nick. Great
thank you.
job. What's the like when do they sell out? Do they sell out the day of, a week in
Yeah,
advance? Like what's the schedule of people committing to go to the show?
yeah, it's definitely day of.
Okay.
I would
How
like
many
it to
how many
be,
tickets typically we have sold on a show that will sell out at a
yeah.
hundred? How many are sold the day before? Like what level are you at?
It's not uncommon for me to go into Friday morning having 30 tickets sold.
Okay. So like 2/3 of them are selling the day of.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
It's and sometimes I'll boost up the bucks that we have on Facebook just to sell it out, or I'll do some laps around the brewery beforehand to get to that magic number. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
when
I
you,
used to fret about it going into it, like, oh my
yeah,
gosh,
of
we're only at
course.
50 and it's the morning of, and now I'm like, yeah, it'll happen. And if not, that's okay too.
Yeah. That's good. Uh, how many people, if you ticket 100 people, how many people typically show up?
100. Yeah,
Really?
I wouldn't say every single person that has a ticket shows up, but in terms of like, is the room filled?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You get some
Like, do we
walk-ups.
need to bring more chairs? Yeah, exactly. There's
Yeah.
some walk-ups, there's some stragglers hanging around.
Okay.
There's some people that don't use Eventbrite. So yeah, it's a
Sure.
really big room and big space, and it was kind of daunting taking that over because the show was run at a there's a balcony level that maybe fits 35 people, and that's where it was run previously.
Mm,
And so we had talked and proposed the idea of bringing it down to the main level. I was like, I don't know if I can fill it, but we'll see how it goes. If anything, we'll push the tables closer, and then slowly but surely, we've kind of built the room to being packed.
nice.
So, which is
Do you
I'm very
bring
happy about.
any do you bring any equipment and or chairs to the show?
Do I bring any equipment or chairs? I have my own mic stand and mic and cords and stuff like that. They have
Okay.
speakers there, which is
Okay.
nice that I don't need to lug it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have chairs and tables and everything.
Nice. That's awesome. What's your top Facebook marketing trick or a couple, like specific?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, it, it's very, there's definitely a fine line for the radius that you're setting for the location, the duration you're running the ad.
Let's talk about radius. Like
Yeah,
what radius do you like to set around a
about
venue?
5 miles.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nice.
and it makes a lot more sense because, being in the heart of Denver, right, compared to if you're running a show in a suburb, right, or if you're running it in a mountain town, right? I mean, 5 miles doesn't maybe work, right? Or if there's more people that are more used to driving, so you would
Yep.
need to adjust. Being in a city in a neighborhood of that city, right? You can get away with just having a smaller radius there. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
Um,
for time, it's I think probably like run ads the Monday, start the run on the Monday for a Friday show. Yeah.
mhm. Nice. Awesome. Any booking wins in that direction? Like comics you're excited to have or exceptional lineups?
Yeah, I would say just anytime you can get any of the Growlix guys on the show, Ben Roy, Adam Caden Holland, Andrew Orvendal, you're doing well.
Yeah.
I had Adam on my show in June and then Ben on my show in September, and
Nice.
I was wanting to build up to that 100 for the show with Adam. I kind of set
Hmm.
that as a benchmark, and I was happy that we hit it. And
Nice.
then yeah, both walked away with very kind things to say about the show, which I took as the utmost of compliments. So I was pretty excited about both of those.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Uh, any tricks on booking TV famous comics like Ben and Adam?
Well, I know it's easy to have inquiries, left in DMs, right? Especially, if you are hitting up someone that doesn't follow you, it's so easy to not, for them not to see the notification, right? Or anything like that. So I would just say, I guess, not that I have tips for booking people, but I guess if you're trying to book people and it's not working, don't take anything personally if you don't get an answer, if you don't get a reply, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have it as seen, right? I mean,
Yeah.
people, especially more famous comics, their inbox are probably flooded, right? And especially if they're not following you, they probably just don't see it. I mean, it's
Right.
possible that they hate you, but I think that's less likely the case.
That's hilarious. Um,
How
all
about you,
right.
Mark? Do you have any advice on booking bigger comedians?
I think the best advice I'd have is word of mouth is really important. Like, you're doing something right when the comics start reaching out to you. Uh,
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
so if you can create an exceptional experience for the comedians, and there's so many vectors for that. It could be what you're paying. It could be the lodging you're providing them if they're traveling. It could be the actual show itself. Like, so when you filled a room with 100 people and the headliner told you they were happy, people talk. they might
Hmm.
they might Google Oasis comedy show and see, oh, Ben did this show, and they'll just text Ben and be like, should I do this show? How was it? Did he take good care of you? Was he nice? Was he a jerk? That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, so I think being nice to everybody, like, you really just want to establish a good reputation. You want to be in it for the long haul. Like, the best case scenario is your show's been running for 10 years and then, like, everybody knows it. It's well known. In fact, like, the show is as famous as the comedian you're trying to book. So I think that should be the goal of every producer is to just have plans to run a show for a long time.
Yeah, yeah, and totally echo that last part of being nice. I was talking to some of the guys at the Comedy Lounge over the weekend, and we were just talking about how far that goes. And it's like,
Yeah.
like any scene or with any industry, right, or creative aspect, there certainly are going to be people that think, that their heads are too big, right? And it sucks for those people, but also there's nothing wrong with being nice to everybody. Like,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
you
And you
want people to
never,
walk away and be like, he's a really nice guy. Like that's,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Um, all right. Any tips on keeping a venue? Sounds like some venues have come and gone in your day. Any thoughts on, like, why you lost venues, or
Yeah,
I
well, with Epic Brewing, I was happy to say that the only reason my mic stopped was because the venue closed. Not that I was doing something wrong,
yeah.
right? I mean, there's so many mics and shows that can be a one and done. I mean, granted, I've had
Hmm.
those, right? And that's okay too, right? But it's in terms of keeping a venue, I would say just making sure you're bringing people in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
especially with a brewery or a bar, right? Like you can't do anything if the patrons are not buying things, but you can make sure that you're bringing people in. And if you're
Right.
bringing people in, like same with if a crowd's not good, right? Because we all know that it does happen sometimes. It's easy to beat yourself up as a host, but it's also like, well, I brought 80 people in, I brought 50, I booked the room. I can't help how they're reacting, right? If they're just not a happy crowd, but
Yeah.
all you can do is bring people in.
Yeah.
So I would
Nice.
say that'd be my biggest tip.
All right. Cool. You got any comedy goals coming up? We're kind of landing the plane here. We're wrapping up.
Uh, Not really. As we're looking toward the end of the year, I feel like I've accomplished my comedy goals for the year, which I'm pretty excited about. I set a low goal of getting into 2 comedy festivals, and I've gotten into 5. And then
Nice.
I wanted to get to a B set at Comedy Works, and I was happy to do that 2 times ago, which I was pretty excited
Nice.
about. And I wanted to hit a certain number of shows I was on, and I've hit that. So
Okay.
I'm feeling pretty satisfied and happy
What
with
was
how
your
this year has gone.
how about 2023's show booking win for Nick Ellis as a comedian? What was the show you were most excited to get booked on, or
Ooh,
that
I
turned
would,
out the best?
yeah, I would say I had hit up Steve Gillespie when he was in Cleveland at the comedy club there, Hilarities.
Hmm.
It was the day after that comedy festival, and I was in town, so I had shot him a message saying, "Hey, like, just curious if you have any guest spots available. If not, totally cool." And he was kind enough to talk to the comedy club there, and I was able to get on stage at Hilarities, which, being where I'm from, to say that was a
Hmm.
bucket list is a vast understatement. So,
That's
I mean,
amazing.
I was
That's
just
great.
flying high after that. So yeah, I'd say that's my biggest win.
That's cool, man. You're a mover and a shaker. Things are going in the right direction for you. It was great chatting with you. Thank you so much for your
Hey, thank
time.
you very much, Mark.
Uh, yeah, we're gonna wrap this up. Where can people find you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at EllisND, and also check out any if you're in the Denver area, pick up a Rooster magazine at your local newsstand. I just started writing with them and creating some content. Just put
Nice.
together I'm doing some sketches and skits with them. So yeah, follow me on Instagram and check out Rooster and come to my show, the Nick Ellis and Friends Comedy Show, every third Friday of the month at Oasis Brewing.
Amazing. All right. Thanks, Nick. We're gonna shut this down. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll be back next Monday night.